Claire, it's not often that we have a repeat guest come back, and I guess the universe has kind of taken care of this one, and I think things have aligned, and I really wanted to get you back on the show this week in particular. So welcome back.
Thank you. I'm excited to be back again.
Yeah, so you did an episode with us, I think it was December last year, talking about managing stress in crypto. And out of all the episodes that we've done, I would say you're probably in the top 5 most mentioned episodes from friends and family and people that I know. And I don't know whether that's because it kind of covered more than just crypto, or whether it really landed with people, or probably both. And I don't think mental health is really discussed in the crypto space very often. And I know that a lot of people in this space have probably developed some poor mental health habits. And I put a couple of tweets out early this week and one last week. The first tweet was, your self-worth is not your net worth. And I also put a tweet out asking the audience whether we should do an episode on managing mental health in crypto. And I think I got around, let's have a look, 74% yes. So I thought, right, we really need to do this one. And on Tuesday this week, so we're recording this on Thursday the 19th of May, you'll be listening to this a couple of days afterwards on the Saturday, because that's when this will be published, if not maybe a bit afterwards. So on Tuesday this week, I came back from one of your incredible retreats in Portugal, which gave me so much grounding. It gave me a huge space to think, reflect, relax. I'm put into place some really good mental health and spiritual habits that I kind of knew about, but I think knowing and doing are two different things. So I thought, let's get you back on the show and discuss some of the things that I learned, because I believe that a lot of these tools that you provide people will help them an enormous amount, especially at the minute, because this space has been pretty horrible. It's been pretty harsh. There's been some terrible things happen over the last couple of weeks. But there's also some brilliant things that are happening in the space, and there's an opportunity for people to reset, take stock, and go again, whilst we probably are in this bear market for a little while. So perhaps you want to introduce yourself to people that don't know you, first of all.
Oh, thanks, Kev. I'm really glad to be back here again. So, guys, my name's Claire. I am a holistic lifestyle coach and a ex-detective in the police, which is kind of how I've fallen into the space of psychological strengthening and specialising in talking to people about managing their stress, their mental health, and in particular focus around the 4 bodies of wellness, which is our mental, physical, emotional and spiritual health. I've been in a lot of very stressful, volatile situations and managed them and helped other people manage them in my previous role as a detective, and now in my current role. I feel it's important to work with people to teach them essentially what I'm going to hopefully teach you all today. So I do really want to start with one of my favourite quotes. You've already heard this, Kevin. The 18 inches from your heart to your mind will be the longest road you will ever travel. And I think that's a really, really special quote to think, because, I mean, we're all slightly different distance, heart to head, but it is a very, very difficult road to travel at times. And it really makes you think, actually, that no matter what you're going through, you're always with yourself. You're born with yourself and you will die with yourself. And no matter what else goes on in your life, what other people come and go, situations you go through, just remember that you are valuable. You are as valuable as everything else around you. So that's very special to me. So rewind that, listen to it again, absorb it.
Yeah, I love this because, you know, there's this saying that a week in crypto is a year in normal life. And it feels like sometimes it feels like all I do is live and breathe crypto. And of course, doing this show twice a week now, it means that I'm really plugged into the space. And I'll be honest, over the last 6 months, probably a little bit less than 6 months, 4 or 5 months in particular, some of the decisions that I've made in the market have not been the best decisions, and they have played on my mind. You know, I lost some positions on certain coins, and I always have money that you know, that I could afford to lose in theory. it would be horrific. But I'm never risking too much. I'm always playing it safe. And even I felt the strain of what this market has brought. It's been particularly tough, I think, for people that came into the space where the prices are a little bit higher and have seen their coins capitulate, and it's been extremely hard for people that have been in Luna and UST. But the crypto veterans kind of are used to this volatility. So I think if you're new to a space, you have to set your expectations and you have to understand that this market is volatile. And unfortunately, there is a lot of crap in there. But there's some brilliant things going on. There's some projects and some cryptos that are going to make the world better. So I think you have to firstly take stock of your current situation and then just kind of like reflect on your timeframes, because everybody wants to get rich quick in this space, or most people do. Anybody that comes to me and says, "Oh, I've been thinking about going into crypto," that what they're really saying is, which coin should I put some money into that I'm gonna like 10x my money and make some quick cash? And that's not how investing works. That's not how building wealth works, right? Your time horizons need to be longer, and you need to take profits. You need to have proper risk management. And we say this on the show over and over again. But, I took my own advice to a certain extent. I wish I took it more, because I would have been left with a lot more. But, I've done all right. But there's some people that have bet the farm and lost the farm, and that's not cool. But for the people somewhere in the middle, like most of our listeners, I think that they probably, a bit like me, spend way too much time looking at charts, way too much time looking at Twitter and being plugged into the space. And that kind of stress and those poor habits can manifest into other areas of their life. So today, I've asked you to come on to talk about some of the tools and techniques that you work with people on a one-to-one basis. And I wanted this to be a little bit interactive as well. So maybe I could do some of this stuff with you as we go. So where should we start? How can people manage their emotional state and their mental health better?
So I think a really great place to start with this is to break down the fact that we all have core values and belief systems that are quite deeply embedded within ourselves. They literally influence us, the world around us, our lives, and they're things that have developed over time. Okay, so they're very, very dependent on our past experiences. So it doesn't matter how much you're studying the charts or how much knowledge you have of this world. They are other influencing factors that can be productive, but they can also be very unproductive. And if they're that deeply embedded with you, a really brilliant place to start is just by recognizing them. When I give examples today, they're going to be quite extreme examples just because I'm trying to emphasize a point. But obviously, we're looking at a scale.
The more extreme, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
So when we start to talk about our core beliefs and values, we're saying that we're to our absolute core being, believing and bringing things to life. So if you believe that you're not going to succeed in life, you therefore maybe were less inclined to go for a job interview. And when you do have to go for a job interview, because you ultimately need money, you might present really terribly at that job interview. So then you don't get the job, or you get a terrible job. You're really unhappy. And then you've literally just fulfilled your own prophecy because you're not happy now. So you're not going to succeed in life. And you keep reliving that circle. So unless you can kind of break out of that, then you're going to keep going around in a circle. And that is your embedded values and beliefs. Similarly, your values can be really heavily influenced by the media, pop culture, social environment. And I think that's a huge thing at the moment with this space, is that there's so many different people saying so many different things that unless you do fall back on staying true to what needs to influence your own self, then you can get really mixed up in that space.
Can I say something on that point? And if I am going to end up interrupting you as we go, so I'm going to apologize now for that.
That's okay.
But I think this is so important. When you're coming into this space, you have to set your own rules. and you have to live by those rules. So if you're coming into this space and you're trading and you're making small profits and that's your strategy, great. If you're coming into this space to buy the dips of Bitcoin and Bitcoin only, or some of the big blue chip cryptos, and you're going to hold them for a period of time, do that. Don't get bloody FOMO by looking at people's tweets saying, oh, I've just made $1 million on this crap dog meme coin. You know, I've made 100x on SHIB, and thinking, God, if only I was that person, and maybe I should risk more. Maybe I should go for some of these more speculative tokens. And by all means, do that with a small amount, but stay true to yourself, because where I see people going wrong all the time is that they expose themselves to more and more and more risk and start betting on more and more stupid, volatile and high risk projects. And even some of the stuff that doesn't seem as risky, like I use Luna as an example. Yeah, there were plenty of people that were in that project and look what happened. So I set myself some rules at the start of this bull cycle to take profits as I went, and I did that. And thank God that I did. And what I do with those is a whole other story. But I just wanted to say that is like, you've got to tune out of the general narrative, because I look back to November last year, end of November, and some of the biggest crypto traders, the biggest macroeconomic analysts in the world were predicting 100k Bitcoin, 150k Bitcoin, 10, 20k Ethereum, and look what happened. So the top people get it wrong. And you know, there's and one of these guys, and I'm not going to name them because they're not here to like defend what they said, but he made this prediction, but a few weeks before he said the crowd is always wrong. And I think that when you've got a general narrative, people all pile in on that narrative, and it only takes something to unfold that doesn't follow that narrative. Everyone gets spooked, and look what happens in the market.
Yeah.
Plus, we've got this crazy economic backdrop. We've got inflation going through the roof. So we're going to see the stock market's in a terrible situation, and the job market certainly isn't going to get much better anytime soon. So yeah, you've got to make your own decisions to tune out of the noise on Twitter and tune out some of the YouTubers. In fact, you know, I'm grateful to anyone that's listening to this podcast, because we try and provide valuable information to help people. But you know, stop listening to these YouTubers to tell you with this technical analysis to say, yeah, we're going to make 100x on this coin. So anyway, bit of a rant, but please carry on.
No, I appreciate
yourself.
Exactly. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about your values and your beliefs, because they are yours. And ultimately, they are the groundwork for your own actions, decisions, behaviors. They're the things that make you passionate about something. If you're an honest person, a loyal person, if you're full of optimism or honor, or, you know, but flip that round, we've got the negative as well. People can have negative core values about seeing the world as a dark place, or they don't deserve love or happiness, or, you know, so they can be negative. But what we're trying to do here is flip those narratives round and get you really thinking about what is important to you. What do you value? If you don't understand your values, you might violate them without even realizing, because you don't know what they are. So something I'd really like everyone to do, obviously you can come back to this point in the podcast and try it at the end, or do it now. But it's just to answer a couple of questions to me. All I want you to do is answer them, and then we're going to forget about them for a minute. But 3 questions. I want you to think about who you admire. I want you to think about when you feel most like yourself, and what activities bring you the most joy. And that can literally be a physical activity like a sport or something, or it can be getting in the bath with a glass of wine. So they can be as narrow or as broad as you wish them to be.
So I wrote these down last week with you, and I came up with a bit of a list. And I'm not going to say who was on my list, because it's not really important. But what's the purpose of writing these down? Well, what are we going to get from that that's gonna help us?
So when we sit and we actually reflect on the core basics of the things that make us happy, the people that we admire, it's a bit of a brain dump from the messiness and all the other stuff that's going on in your head, and it makes it very simplistic on paper. So that's step 1 with any form of writing. We're trying to brain dump from our head to make it more simple. But actually, you start to realize that you don't need all the noise surrounding you. And the people that you admire, more than likely, are going to be people that should be having some kind of positive influence on you. And you might see that perhaps your behavior isn't aligning towards the people that you admire. And it can be a little bit of an appreciation, a little bit of grounding as to where you are right now, because it makes you think, actually, I'm not working towards that. I'm not serving towards my purpose. And similarly with when you most feel like yourself, you might put the most basic thing, seeing your loved ones smile and feel joy, spending time with them because you've made them laugh and happy. That's got nothing to do with opening an app on your phone and checking the markets. That's got nothing to do with moving money around in wallets, or, really think back to the things that make you happy and bring you joy. And then again, with the activity side of things as well, very similar answers. But what that can then do when you've got those answers written down is when you're feeling in a moment of darkness, of anxiety, of sadness, of stress, you can think about your answers to those questions and do those things that bring you happiness. So you switch away from the darkness and you purposefully bring in the joy, because when you're in those moments of darkness, it's very, very hard to see the light. It's really, really hard to think about the things that are important to you because they are so all-consuming, and they really take over whatever else is going on in your head. So having those things written down, you're more likely to remember them and think about them. And you can start to delve into those even more as well. You can write not only who you admire, but why you admire them. Write, a whole paragraph on them if you want to. Same with when you feel most like yourself, or activities that bring you joy. Once they're down on paper and you've got to actually connect with them and think about them, it's going to be really hard for you to break away from them. And you'll definitely be able to refer back to them when you are in those moments of not feeling quite so connected to them.
A lot of people in this space do feel quite calm and collected and have managed their risk and probably think, well, no, I've got, I'm reasonably happy. But I would say that, are you completely present?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
I know I'm not always present. I know that. And in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking about, maybe I've got a trade on, maybe I'm looking at some price action. Maybe I'm thinking about some of the things I want to discuss on the podcast, or guests that I want to bring on, or ways that we want to grow the podcast. And I think when you focus on those things that are most important, it lines up with the fundamental reasons of why we're doing this and why we're in this space, is because typically the people we admire are our loved ones, and maybe friends, family, maybe they're mentors or idols, or even celebrities. But I think focusing on that higher level stuff rather than what the market is doing today or this hour can really bring us out of that funk and that fog. Because before I came on your retreat, honestly, my mind was a little bit foggy, to say the least. And I think that was just a combination of, Ben and I, so Ben's away at the minute, and we're giving him a week off the show because he needs to rest and recuperate. We've gone so hard with this show since we relaunched season 2 at the start of November last year, and we haven't come up for air. And I don't necessarily think that's always a good thing. I mean, it's made the show wildly successful and we have a lot of fun with it, but actually just stepping out and taking a break from the space is a very, very good and healthy thing.
I definitely agree. Absolutely. To ground yourself and be present is one of the most beautiful things you can gift to yourself, particularly doing it in a way that brings you happiness and joy. So that's a really, really important point to make, is, if you need to, just put the phone down and just do something that will make you smile, even if it's for 5 minutes. Preferably for longer if you can, but it is good to get out of that headspace and into something that does bring you a little bit more purpose, a little bit more joy in that moment. It doesn't have to be forever. We're not telling you to delete everything and throw your phone in the river by any means, but to just ground yourself in that moment and get away from the noise can be excellent. And then you'll probably go back in with a much clearer headspace and a lot more clear purpose as to what you want to achieve.
And I did that yesterday. So I've been working with our producer Cal today on getting some big guests on the show, and I've had the most productive day I've had in months with regards to podcast work. And I wouldn't say I've worked any harder, but the level of clarity that I have is much, much much higher, which is great. And I feel good about it because I'm acting with intention and with purpose, rather than it's like having multiple tabs open up in your mind. So I always think that if I've just got one tab open and I'm working on one thing and I haven't got loads of other things going on in the background, then I'm more focused, more happy, more present. And that's great. And that's where my best work comes from. That's where I can get creative and execute with ease in a state of flow. Whereas if I've got lots of things open, I've got TradingView open, I've got an exchange window open, I've got podcast stats, I've got Twitter, I've got a guest list, I've got Slack open, with like messages from my other business, and I've got looking at my WhatsApp, and I catch myself doing this, and I think this isn't a good thing. And I know from the outside, everyone thinks that Ben and I are like super productive and highly tuned entrepreneurs, but the reality is we are some of the time, but not all of the time. And no one's perfect.
You wouldn't be so successful as human beings if you were like that all the time as well, because you would just absolutely burn yourselves out. So the things that you two have achieved is by having that conscious awareness that sometimes you do have to slow down and recoup yourselves. Because to move on to the next point of, it's all fair and well talking about these things and being aware of them, and being willing to sort of influence some changes and make sure that we do stay focused and present where we can. But there are unconscious behaviors that you won't even be aware of that will influence you.
Well, let's talk about this, because this is super interesting.
So a really excellent example of this, that I will continue to use throughout my career because it is so perfect, is if you think about a very small baby crying, what does a mother do in order to soothe that child? A father, mother, family member will give that child some form of reward. So it might be a cuddle, it might be a snack, it might be a toy. Child then stops crying and is happy. Great, success. That's what we wanted to achieve. If we then progress through the years and you've got sort of a young teen who's maybe going through hormonal changes, a breakup, stressful exams, falling out with friends, we've all been there, a driving test even, they're feeling pretty down, they're feeling pretty low. So what happens? They're going to get rewarded with treats, money, time with friends, the internet, whatever it is, something to make them feel better, to reward them for passing the exams, for getting through that breakup, for passing their driving test. We then fast forward again, as an adult, we're feeling stressed, we're feeling sad, the markets are all going to shit and we're feeling very, very anxious about it. And what do? We reach for something that's going to be a reward. And when I talk about reward, I'm talking, it could be alcohol, it could be chocolate, it could be a late night watching a movie, something that makes you feel better. So it doesn't have to be a physical reward, but we have that unconscious behavior is so embedded in us from when we were younger, by people rewarding us with things for doing things that perhaps made us a little bit sad, to make us feel a little bit better. Now, there's no ill intentions from the people doing that. Like, it's imposed on us by our parents, but it was imposed on them by their parents and their relatives when they were older. It's just a chain that has fallen through. And it's a way of showing love and dealing with a situation. So that's why we then subconsciously do that to deal with these situations as adults, as older people. And you don't really think about those things until you're in a low place, and the reason and the purpose behind you doing it, because it's such a subconscious thing to do. So what we're trying to think about here is just becoming aware of them, and the fact that you shouldn't ever have to really reward yourself. If you want to have those things, have them, but it shouldn't be seen as sort of a coping mechanism. There should be other things that you can do, which we'll go into a little bit as well. But you're essentially creating awareness around your bad habits, I say in sort of brackets, so that you can notice them before they actually occur.
So can I tell you some of my bad habits?
Yeah, please share. I'm sure we all want to hear.
So I honestly think people will resonate with this, and I'm I'm open, and I'll start sharing some things. So when I'm in a place where I'm maybe a bit anxious, or I feel like I haven't had a productive day, or I'm being hard on myself, which is actually one of my traits and quite critical of myself, is that I will just go and reach in the evening for a glass or two of wine. And then what goes with a glass of wine is, a packet of nuts or something. And then, that packet, then I think, oh, a nice bit of chocolate will do. And then I'll kind of like veg out on the sofa for a few hours. And then in the morning, I'll wake up and think, I don't feel great. I haven't had that much to drink that I'm hungover, but I just feel a bit groggy. And I notice myself doing that, I would say, probably January, February time, because the weather's crap here in the UK and it's dark, and I just wanted to feel cozy, and it's a bit like a comfort blanket. And there's some of my that's my classic bad habit. And then what I would do is I'd be like, right, I'm not going to have breakfast. I'm going to fast, and then I'm going to go to the gym, and I'm going to train, and then I'm going to have a really healthy lunch. And then what happens is that reward mechanism kicks in later in the day, and I say, well, I've done really well today, I'm just going to have a few extra bits and pieces, and the cycle then repeats itself.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen all the time, but I certainly go through cycles of those mini cycles.
Absolutely. And I think that you've just said it very clearly, that is, people restrict themselves and see these things as rewards. So they might, your example was that you go through the day and then you get to the evening, but it might be that people go for weeks without these things because they're being, again, quotation, good. And then because they've done it for so long, they're like, do you know what? I just need to reward and have a treat. So that's when they have a little bit of a binge on these things and feel terrible. Whereas actually, if you stop seeing them as a reward, and I'm not saying by any means you just have them as and when you want, but if they are just a part of your lifestyle every now and again because you want them, then that's fine. But if you start relying on them as a reward, that's when they're not being very productive and they're not serving you at all.
And I also find my decision making is worse then. So if we put that in the context of crypto, if you're making some decisions about trades or whether to sell or whether to buy, you want your mind to be razor sharp, and you want to be in a place where you're not stressed about it, but you're grounded, you're in a state of flow, and you can make those well-informed decisions without anxiety and without stress. And you can then say, well, do you know what? I've made my best decision in my best possible condition, and therefore I've done everything that I can do.
Absolutely. And, that was just us chatting about one example, but there are lots of ways that we are spending our mental energy on our subconscious things that we're not even aware of. So if we can start to think about those, then we're going to save our brain power, because that brain power at the moment is just being wasted on things that we can't control, and it's draining our mental energy. And you even mentioned yourself earlier, if you've got more mental energy, then it's left for your creative things. It's left for the things that you want to serve you, rather than being wasted on the negatives. So it's about learning to focus on what you can control. One that I mentioned on the retreat, I don't know if you remember, but with the weather, is to say that, you can't change the weather, but you can prepare for it. So if there's going to be a huge storm, you can't stop it from happening. You're not God. You're not in control of that. But, if you're going to go outside, take a jacket, take an umbrella. Or if you had planned to do something outside that you've now got to change because of the weather forecast, then you can change and do something inside. So if your thoughts aren't being very productive, if they're spiraling out of control, you're feeling stressed and anxious, you're constantly back on your phone, checking the markets, checking what's going on, then you can make a conscious effort to shift yourself into a more positive energy state and to think about more helpful topics. Revert back to those questions. What activities bring you joy? Do you love the rugby? Do you love sport? Switch the telly on if needed and catch 10 minutes of that just to distract your mind. You're trying to do things that are going to be better for you.
I was going to say, I think the storm is a great metaphor for the market. It's
you like that one?
We thought it was going to be sunny this year. We thought it was going to be a good year.
And we thought we were getting a heat wave.
It's rained and it's rained and it's rained. And the umbrella is a good metaphor for like risk management and like protecting yourself and, whatever that looks like for you, and managing your risk and making some informed decisions. And don't beat yourself up because you've got the weather wrong, right? If you
100%.
that's the thing. I've seen so many people. I've got friends of mine that bought into the space, a few months ago, and they're like really beat up because the prices are down. I'm like, dude, just chill, right? We're a few months. We're going through a winter at the moment. If you bought good stuff, the summer will come and
Yes,
your flowers
absolutely.
will bloom again, right?
Yeah.
Don't all have to be millionaires this year. Like, look, what are the odds if you're born a human being? What are the odds of you being given the opportunity to become a millionaire? They're tiny. Most people don't ever get there. I think you've got to reframe what success looks like, and maybe we'll come on to that in a bit. But anyway, I told
I
you it
agree.
didn't. So
No, I'm so grateful for the input, and I totally agree. There's still time in this space. So if we can get people using their thoughts and their energy productively for the extra time that they now need to get the results that they are aiming towards, what a beautiful place to be in, rather than seeing it as such a huge negative zone that it appears to be at the moment. So you don't have to even, go crazy with productivity, but you can just become a bit more realistic and be a bit more balanced with your thoughts. Like you said, just change the timescales. It's sort of like saying, instead of sort of thinking, oh, this is terrible, this is awful, I can't ever do anything right, I made loads of wrong decisions, just kind of go, yeah, okay, I made some bad decisions, but I've also made plenty of good ones. So it's about changing those thought patterns, instead of it being completely negative and terrible, to just being a bit more productive, and then changing those negative parts of your mental energy, spending them wisely, and just tolerating a little bit of discomfort, because there's no two ways about it. There is some discomfort here. We can't make it all sunshine and rainbows as much as we wish we could. So we're not totally eliminating any of our emotions by any means, but we're just making sure that we're aware of them and that we're trying to balance them. So accept your feelings, don't be controlled by them. My tag word, I think, on the retreat, Kevin, you'll agree with this, was just surrender to some things. Because once you learn to understand how you behave to things, then you can be a little bit more in control of your emotions, and you can spend that extra energy, rather than it being wasted totally, on the productive things, on the things that bring you joy, on, if you want it to be planning for the future and what comes next, and that's brilliant as well. But you have to just experience that little bit of discomfort and understand that it's necessary to have some greater gain in the long run. There's absolutely nothing that you can do right now that is going to change what's happening inside you and how you're feeling, unless you take those actions yourself.
We both run businesses. I've run businesses since 2010, so 12 years now. God, wow. Yeah,
Congratulations.
no wonder I'm getting a few wrinkles. Yeah, thank you very much. And one thing that I know is that you should never change your goal, but you should always change your methodology and your timescales, because things always take longer and things always seem to go a different way, and things need to be done in a different way to what you think. And, I had some personal wealth goals this year. I had some, aspirations for my crypto portfolio, and that's not going to happen this year. And that's okay. But what I've done is I've changed and I've adapted, and I've put some things into some of the businesses, including this podcast, that will allow me to get to my goals, but in a slower fashion. So it's going to take a bit longer in a different way. And you have to surrender to things like that. So, I just encourage everybody to, I keep saying it, just reframe what success looks like, and reframe your time horizon. It's so important. If you look at traditional markets, you'll be lucky to make if you made 10% a year compounded over 20 years, you'd have done really, really well. That's a real success. And some people I've heard crying to me because they've only made 100% return, and they've seen somebody make 1,000% return. It's like, you've hit the lottery. You've done really well with that. And some people are down because they've got maybe a 30, 40, 50, 60, 70% dip on their portfolio. And I remember during the bear market of 2018, we did 2 podcast episodes episodes every single week. And through the whole bear market, I saw my crypto portfolio dipping. But what I could do is I could dollar cost average in and buy more units of the stuff that I wanted. And, at the start of 2020, that did really well. And I didn't expect it to take that long, but it did.
And I think that, you've just inadvertently said another part of it is that actually you can reflect on your progress as well and the things that you have done that are achievements. It's not an ideal situation right now, but take some time to reflect on the things that have been good, things that you have accomplished or things that you've learned. It doesn't have to be the tangible of the money that you've earned, but you might have actually learned a lot of stuff, a lot of information in this space. It might put you in a better position for the future when the cycle comes back round again. So although there will, for every person, there's always room for improvement, I think reflecting on your progress can help you to reinforce your ability to then reach whatever your determination of success is. And you can still then live according to your values and your belief systems. But, you can think each day even on what you've learned about yourself, about the process, and what you hope to achieve tomorrow, because tomorrow is a new day. What's going to happen, and then you can build on that as well. So I think that's another really important thing to think about, is it doesn't all have to be total doom and gloom. Like, what have you learned in this space? Don't allow yourself to get into those negative thought patterns of it's just a complete waste of time. Don't keep thinking about what other people have done and achieved. Think about yourself a little bit. Be a little bit selfish.
I'm not sure who said this quote, but have you heard the one about it goes something like this, is that people overestimate what they can achieve in a year, but underestimate what they can achieve in a decade?
Absolutely love that. It's perfect, isn't it?
Yeah. And if somebody said to me, this is where you'd be 10 years from now, 10 years ago, I'd have said, oh my God, that's brilliant. I'm really happy. But, if somebody has said a year ago, this is where I'd be today, I think, well, that's okay. It's not the worst, it's not the best, but meh, it's all right. But in actual fact, it's really good because that gradual progress compounds. And,
absolutely. It's like they say, don't they? If you only make 1% progress each day, that's still better over a year than not starting at all. So if I was to say to you, Kev, you need to work at this, but you're only going to make 1% progress a year, but actually that is going to add up over the years. Whereas there's the other type of human who might just go, well, I can't be bothered then, I won't even try. And they're making 0% progress, which is just absurd when you could just make that little bit of progress. And that really is all to do with your thought patterns and behaviours and just making space for yourself and what you believe in and what you want to achieve. We have to be really conscious as well that anything we do is going to have an impact on our bodies of wellness. So I mentioned at the start about our physical, mental, emotional and spiritual. I could go on for hours and hours and hours about all of those elements, but they ultimately all have a little bit of an impact on each other.
Could we cover these off? And I appreciate this is going to be a little bit of a longer podcast episode than we had planned, but I think there's just so much that we wanted to talk about. And I take some responsibility for interrupting you so much. But I'm like, oh God, I want to add this in and I want to talk about this. Can we go through those 4 bodies of wellness, what they are, why they're important, and how they connect with each other?
Absolutely. So we'll start with physical body of wellness, which, as you can imagine, is the one that we can see, touch, measure and weigh. So that is where our 12 biological and physiological functioning systems that keep us alive live. So we're literally talking about our physical being. We do also say that it's the container of the 13th system. That's where we call the limbic system. So it's metaphysical. And that is the container of all matter that is created by the mental, emotional and physical bodies together. So when we're talking physical health, we're talking about our joints, our limbs, we're talking about our fitness levels. If we might have physical goals, like for mine personally, I want to do a muscle up really, really badly. So we're talking all encompassing of our physical health there. Our mental is going to be our thoughts, our internal dialogue, and that can be positive and negative, as we've already spoken about on the podcast. Our thought patterns that again can be constructive or destructive, and our intellectual and cognitive skills. So how we challenge ourselves, how we expand our knowledge, how we are creative or limit our creation to ourselves. So our mental is hugely, hugely impactful on our everyday lives, arguably more so than our physical. Spiritual is a little bit more complicated. It can be very open to a lot of different things. It doesn't just refer to religion. I think a lot of the time when I say the word spiritual, people think I mean religion. But what we're trying to explain in the term spiritual is the sense of connection to our own purpose and sort of our own meaning of life, as well as, if we believe in it, a higher power or a divine source. So that is a very personal thing. My purpose, my sort of meaning to my life is going to be very different to yours, Kevin. Similarly, if someone is religious and believes in a higher power, that's their sort of spiritual connection as well. But we talk about this body as where our values and beliefs are held and expressed. So things that we believe in can't necessarily be deemed as right or wrong, true or false. They are just things that we believe. And again, they're different for every person. So these can also include having a connection to other people, experiences that are perceived, the ability to deal with difficult situations can also be deemed as spiritual. So it's quite a big space. And in that space, it's nice to sort of have a think about what makes you feel connected, what makes you feel authentic to yourself. So similarly, we mentioned earlier, like what brings you joy, who do you admire? Those are all very personal and ultimately cross into your spiritual connections. The one I kind of want to focus on the most, if you're happy to, is our emotional health.
I think that's a very good thing to focus on for sure.
I think there's a lot of information out, not enough ever, but about our mental health. I think spiritual is a very open topic that would take us more than just one podcast to cover. And I think physical, again, is probably one of the easier ones to grasp. So I think emotional would be a really, really good one for us to talk through. So,
oh, no, I think so. And just quickly, like with mental health is such a broad topic, and I know so I think we'll probably give managing mental health in crypto. We'll probably use that as the show title. But there's so many things that make up our mental health. You know,
Yeah.
it's it's the four bodies of wellness, really, isn't it? I mean, is that what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely. It's so all-encompassing of everything that it would be so impossible to fit it into a few minutes of explanation. And I think emotional is one, and I've got like an activity that we can all do together for this one. I think it's one that's just not really tapped into as much. People can quite often be quite scared of their emotions and quite scared of dealing with other people's emotions. And actually, that is a space within us that holds our feelings and stores our abilities and patterns to cope, react, respond, which, you know, is kind of what we're talking about here on the podcast today. So I thought that would be a really good one for us to delve a little bit deeper into. And it ultimately connects to our core values and beliefs in a conscious and unconscious way, which is stuff that we've touched on. So if, again, you would probably need a little bit of paper, and I think Kevin is going to share the actual picture of this if you need a little help. If you can draw a giant triangle, just the three sides, as big as you can on a piece of paper, and you are then going to put that triangle into 7 different sections. So just draw lines across. So you've got like lots of rectangles in the triangle.
Well, I'll try and include this in the show notes as well, because I think that if you're following along with this and you're in the car or the gym, then or wherever you listen to the show, just saying the places that I listen to podcasts and our own, I actually listen back to our shows, believe it or not. Anyway, you'll be able to copy this. So it's the pyramid of emotional agility. Is that what you call it? That's what I wrote down.
Emotional agility or emotional needs. I think
emotional needs, I like that more. I think.
Needs is good, and it's basically a process that is going to enable us to navigate all the twists and turns, all the self-acceptance, the clear-sightedness, have an open mind, the things that get thrown to us, and that actually we shouldn't be ignoring. We should be trying to process and deal and sort of overcome. So at the bottom of our triangle, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the 7 parts, and then Kevin, if you're happy to, I'm going to ask you to do an example so that it can fit for people, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, sure. Let's do it. I mean, I've probably overshared already on this podcast, but let's go for it.
So at the bottom of our pyramid, we are going to put gentle acceptance. So when we're talking about gentle acceptance, it is gentle, because we're just saying ultimately it is what it is. It's not something that is going to be within our control to change now. It's occurring, it's going to occur, it's happened, and we're accepting it. We're gonna have a level of gentle acceptance. That doesn't mean be all and end all. You close the book, you throw it away, you burn it on the bonfire. It's gentle. It's just a level of rationalization to saying this is what it is. Okay, now we move on to what we're going to do next. So we can't really get past that until we sort of have some form of acceptance. So in our second level, we move on from the gentle acceptance to compassion. And this is different for everybody because you are literally just meeting yourself where you are. So we've accepted that this has happened, and however far through your grief process, your mental process of dealing with it, it could be a physical injury that you're having to do, you accept and meet yourself where you are in that process. So you might not have touched this triangle until you're almost at the end of dealing with whatever the situation is, or you could have actually brought in the triangle right at the start. So you meet yourself wherever you are in that. And, Kevin, you mentioned earlier, like looking at what other people are doing and how much they've made or lost or what their next plans are. Forget about them for a minute. Look at yourself and where you are. So we'll then move on to the third part of the triangle, which is routine. We as humans love a bit of routine. It helps us to have structure. It helps us to have mental clarity. It helps us to stick to a thing. And it's very, very healthy for us to start a routine in order to help us let go of the things that we can't control.
Yeah.
So at this point, we've had that level of gentle acceptance, we've had some compassion, and now we're going to start to rationally put in some routine, some healthy habits that are going to let us take control of the situation that is happening around us, whatever that might be. Obviously, we're relating this at the moment to crypto, but this triangle is very useful for life in general. The next one, and I think this is a really important one for what we're discussing, is connection. That can be social or emotional, and it can be distancing, but also bringing people in. So nurturing relationships or pushing them away. They don't have to be people that you know. They could be people on Twitter or Instagram or other social platforms that just don't serve you and actually make you feel worse.
Right, so you're just comparing yourself to somebody else's life highlights, right? You're looking at that influencer or that account on Twitter that's got 500,000 followers driving around in a Lamborghini, right?
Yes, exactly. And at this moment in time, they're not serving you, and maybe they will at another time in your life. We're not saying you have to cut them out forever, but at the moment, make sure that it's serving your purpose and what you're trying to achieve. So cut them out, distance if you need to, bring them back in the future. There could be people that you want to bring closer. Think back to the things we said. Who do you admire? Who brings you joy? What situations bring you joy? There might be people that you want to bring into your life. Or you could just have a friend that won't shut up about crypto and it does your head in. So actually, you just stop talking to them for a little while.
I'm probably that friend for most people. I've even got a mug that says that I talk about crypto a lot. Anyway, carry on.
But it's time to be a little bit selfish and to figure out what connections are the ones that are going to serve you at the moment. And this doesn't have to be hugely negative. You don't have to be horrible to someone, but you can even mention to them, like, I'm just taking a little bit of time to process everything and deal with this. I love you to pieces, but please no more discussion about this situation, crypto or whatever the situation is. The next one is one of the hardest. So it's courage. So with courage, a little bit like what I said earlier, we are allowing ourselves to get into that slightly uncomfortable space. So we're allowing ourselves some emotion here. We're allowing ourselves to feel and to open up a little bit. It's starting to identify what's actually important to you in this moment. That is such a broad spectrum of things, but it's really important to have a little bit of courage in order to be able to touch in the uncomfortable zone to reach through. That one I find personally one of the hardest parts to do. You have to kind of have a word with yourself and take a moment to be in your own space. And we then move up to the reset. So we've moved into that uncomfortable space, and actually we're getting to the point where we're like, oh, okay, I've almost sort of dealt with this. It's almost over in this circle, in this set of triangle, I should say. But in this circumstance, when it's over, what parts are, going to be normal to me what's going to carry on serving me and what is no longer useful. So if I'm to go back down to the bottom of the triangle, like what would I get rid of and what would I keep? So it's a bit of self-reflect as well.
I'd get rid of my Doge and I'd keep my Bitcoin.
Exactly. There we go. So,
is that the example you wanted, or are we doing a different one?
That is a very good example. But you've gone through all of those emotions in the pyramid, and you're now able to sort of reflect back on it with more perspective, right? So you're able to look back and go, wow, okay, these parts actually I got through and I'm going to hold on to those, but these parts are actually really useless and they don't serve me, so they can go away when I reset. I'm going to reset myself, reground, start again. I don't need those things. And following on from there, the very peak top of the triangle is our wisdom, and the wisdom is everything that we have learned from that situation, good or bad, positive or negative. And some people won't actually reach that wisdom before they go back down to the bottom of the triangle. Some people will get through the situation that they're in, but they don't actually learn anything from it, or they don't take anything from it. And that's okay, because they dealt with what they needed to deal with. And eventually they will get to the top of that triangle in a similar or different situation. But if you can be conscious of it and actually reflect, take time to look at the situation and get something from it in a positive way, that's a really, really beautiful space to be. This triangle, you might actually find that you make a step up and you come back down. You make two steps up and you come back down. And that's fine. It's your triangle. You can do with it as you wish. You can literally spend as much time in each section or as little time in each section as you need to. Some people who've given me examples have said, wow, like I go from gentle acceptance to connection, super, super quickly. And then I spend quite a long time trying to overcome the courage. And that's fine. But equally, other people will take a very, very long time to even sort of get into the gentle acceptance part.
I also guess this goes back to like some of the unconscious values that we have as well, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It'll all come down to what we've been doing previously in our life, our childhood, all these other things as well. So
it's absolutely your triangle to sort of process as you need, because something that I might need a lot of courage over, Kevin, you might not need a lot at all. So it really is like based on an individual perspective of those steps, but it really, really does help to get a person navigating the things that are thrown at them and how to process and deal with them.
I love this triangle. When we sat down and did it at the retreat, I was like, this is so good. I understand this. And so what I'm probably going to do is just put this up and put it on my office wall, actually. So when I'm having a day of it, I can just look up and go, right, okay, and just remind myself. I thought it was really good.
Oh, I love that. And it's really important to say that, we're not by any means trying to ignore any difficult emotions and thoughts. We're trying to just learn to sort of process them and deal with them. And some people dive headfirst into those types of situations, but other people do need that little bit of a helping hand to guide them through. And that's why this is so, so important. The last thing that I'll let you sit with is very, very simply, do more of what serves you and less of what doesn't. And so simplistic, but take a second to sort of repeat that through and have a think about it, and just do less of the things that aren't serving you. And if you go through the sort of things that we've discussed on the podcast today and take a moment to actually identify what those things are that are important to you, the things that bring you joy and happiness, the people you admire, then it's quite easy to notice that some of them might have slipped a little bit, and then you can start the process of bringing them back in a little bit. And it's not letting go of other things, it's just finding a bit more balance.
So if you've made it through to the end of this show, thank you so much. I'm aware that this is a slightly off topic for us, but a lot of people have asked me to do this, so I hope you've got some value from it. Clay, I'm going to link to all of your profiles, your website and your Instagram profile on our show notes, so people can go and follow you and find out a little bit more about what you do. And thanks for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for sharing the top of your triangle with us. I learned a lot. I learned a lot from doing this with you again, and I learned a lot from spending a week with you. And I'm going to be implementing some of this stuff. So, thanks again. And if people want to reach out to you, can they do that through Instagram?
Yeah,
If they've got any
absolutely.
questions?
Please do. I have so much more to say on all of these topics. I wish we had more time. So yeah, I'd welcome any other questions, or if anyone just wants any extra support or a little chat, then please do drop me a message.
Cool. Thanks so much, Claire.
Thank you.